Hi, Royalers. Welcome to Royal Black and Elite. I'm Lady TrenettWilson, your lecturer and social historian. I want to begin by thanking everyone for your well wishes as I've recovered from the flu. I hate being sick, but I'm much better now, and I really hate not being able to bring these great lectures and stories throughout our elite Black history. And today I am very excited to bring you a lecture that I kind of gave a teaser on my community page a few weeks ago about the Colored Hockey League. So today we're going to introduce you to the Colored Hockey League. I hope that you enjoy, and let's get into our lecture. Oh, by the way, if you are interested in more elite Black history and want to take a more personal class, we're going to be starting a new lecture in let's see, January, so it'll be February, and it's going to be over the elite blacks in Europe in the 19th and 20th century. Very interesting. We're going to get deep into it, learn about a lot of people. It's going to take us 4 weeks. And so if you're interested, click down below in the description to learn more. Now, in January 2020, Canada released a commemorative stamp honoring members of the Colored Hockey League. Now, this is a part of Canada's elite Black history. There were a lot of Blacks who moved during Reconstruction, before slavery, as they escaped to the North. Some stayed in the U.S., but some went further into Canada. And so there was a Black population in Canada. Well, most of the time they played baseball, but the black church had a problem. The problem was attendance was low, and they needed something to get black strong men in the church. So what did they do? They had four really smart black men came together and they came up with the Colored Hockey League. And the league was in play for like 25, almost 30 years. So this is a great story, again, often hidden in history. Now, there was James Borden, and then there was James Robinson Johnson, who was a Canadian lawyer and a community leader. He was pow-powed by his brother-in-law, and he passed at only 38 years old. There are always these stories that, is kind of sprinkled throughout these elite black stories. James A.R. Kinney, and he was an accountant and community minister. He was also the first superintendent for the Nova Scotia Home for Colored Children. Then there was Henry Sylvester Williams, and he was a Trinidadian lawyer and he was an activist, and he was believed to be one of the earliest founders of the Pan African movement. He held his first Pan African conference in London in 1900 at Westminster Town Hall. So these are the elite black men that came together and founded the Colored Hockey League of the Maritimes. It was also called CHL, and it was founded in 1894. Now, the league featured teams from across Canada's maritime provinces, a region in eastern Canada consisting of three provinces: New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, and Prince Edward Island. Shout out to Canada. I hope I gave those names some respect. Now, reportedly, the first game was played on February the 27th, 1895, at the Dartmouth County rink, and the game ended 1-1. Now, the teams were made up pretty much of the members that were from the churches. So when they first began, they didn't have that many members, but by the end they had 400 members, 12 teams, so they really grew over the years. They had the first game had no nets, and curling stones were used as posts. Now, I don't know what that means, but if you play hockey, I bet you know what that means. Now, some of the teams included the Halifax Stanleys and the Halifax Eurekas, and they were founded by Henry Sylvester Williams. And Brother James Borden, his team was the Dartmouth Jubilees. And the whole hockey league really was started with the original something called the original six. Those teams included the Africaville Seasides, the Truro Victorias, the Charlottetown, the West End Rangers, and even the Amherst Royals. So they had like 6 teams that began the league and they began to grow it from there. The Colored Hockey League predated the Black Baseball League. It was revolutionary in its time and in the way in which the game was played. There were approximately 12 teams with 400 hockey players at the league's greatest, pinnacle. And with the official rule book being the Bible, how could a young black man go wrong? Can you imagine? They're saying this is the Bible is what we're gonna use for the rules of how we're gonna play this game, but it must have worked because, like I said, they grew it to what it was. And so we know that they were not growing these men just to play hockey, but they were also growing them to be men. So some of the league's players are etched in history because of their exceptional play. Like one player, his name was Henry Braces Franklin, and he was an ice cutter by trade, but he was known as the person who created the butterfly move, which I'm showing it here. So if you're a hockey player, do you do that move? I guess only the goalies do that one. Reportedly, Eddie Martin was the first player to use a slap shot. That's a powerful high speed shot. And so he was with the Halifax Eureka in 1906. Now, the league even had a championship after about a 3-month regular season that ran from January to early March. The Halifax Stanleys won the first championship, and then the Eurekas won the next five. Stories of the day report attendance is really strong, 1,000 to 1,500, which were even more than the people who were attending the white hockey show, games. So they had great attendance. And the black people were really exciting. They cheered them on, and so it was really great. And this is 1895, 1900. They had 400 players. Today, the National Hockey League has 26 black players. So we're going to find out what happened to this colored hockey league. But time and time again, we see in these elite black stories, once they began to segregate the talent, the especially in these higher end elite sports, the number of black participation does go down drastically. I really love these stories that are hidden because here it was, we were frolicking in the snow, having a great time, and just like in Bruce's Beach, and I left a link to the video down below, the city wanted their land, the land that they were playing on. So they wanted to run a railroad system through predominantly black community. And so because they wanted to run in this railroad, they wanted to buy up all this land. And of course the locals were angry about that. Of course the players and the teams, 400 people playing. I mean, that's a lot of people. It had attracted a whole community. But the city wanted the land. It ended up in a 5-year legal battle between the league and the city. And the city colluded by with people who were the owners of businesses and really hurt the league. What they did was they made them not rent to them the ice rinks. So now they didn't have a place to play their games. They didn't let the press cover them anymore. So one reason it was growing is because people started knowing about it because the press was talking about it. So now nothing in the press. So that hurt the game really bad. And so because of these things, the league started having games outside. Well, that didn't work. I mean, if it was literally snowing, that didn't work. So a lot of times we see within the black experience, especially in things like this, we need to not only be the players, we must own the infrastructure. The infrastructure is what makes it go. So if you don't have the building to meet in, if you don't have the rink to play in, then you don't, you know, you don't have a fighting chance. So they didn't have a fighting chance. So by 1911, they had to fold. Now, in 1920, they tried to come back again, and they lasted about another 10 years. By then, the NHL had begun, which began in 1917. I think I mentioned this earlier, but if I didn't, currently there are only 26 black players in the NHL. So that's why the Black Hockey League is so important. Hockey is an elite sport. It's brutal. I have some videos here where they're just punching each other. So it's a very brutal sport, but it's a very skilled sport. And it's a sport that blacks excelled in. If you want to know more about this, I learned a lot from a book. A guy named Daryl Fausty wrote a book called Black Ice. So wasn't that really interesting? I love these stories. Even though they're hidden, we learn so much here on Royal Black and Elite. And I hope that you'll sign up for my first class, the Elite Blacks in Europe between the 19th and 20th century. We're going to have classes each month. Each session lasts 4 weeks. I think the classes cost like 25 bucks. So I can eat a sandwich and you can learn, and we can work together to continue to pull the history of Black America, the Black world out, where there were elite royal blacks. I thank you for joining me today and taking some time out to learn a little bit more about the Royal Black and Elite. My sources were Breaking the Ice, The Black Experiences in Professional Hockey by Harris Cecil, the Canadian Encyclopedia, and the Ontario Hockey Association. And I'll see you on another great episode of Royal Black and Elite. Thanks for watching.